Hello there everyone, today's video is all about Rishi Sunak's tax return. Particularly we're going to have a look at the 21-22 tax return, details of which have just been published on the government's website, so let's dive straight in. So, Sunak is a UK resident, so he's subject to income tax, to capital gains tax on his worldwide income and gains. In the future, should he choose to move offshore, perhaps because of his heritage, he could claim non-dom status. Indeed, his wife did claim non-dom status, and he got quite a bit of political heat from that about a year ago, changed the situation for her and paid basically tax as if she wasn't a non-dom. But potentially he could claim that again himself in the future. He could claim non-dom for the first time, she could go back to being non-dom. But anyway, for now, he is UK resident, so for income tax and capital gains tax on worldwide income and gains. So, salary, just shy of 82,000. If you're an MP, that's the salary, 81,908. But for being a minister, you get quite a bit more. In fact, it's almost double again. So ministerial salary, the element for being a minister, 74,255. Now, this actually, not all ministers get the same, and this does include benefit in kind. So you'll be familiar with benefit in kinds on things like use of company cars, but benefit in kinds also apply for accommodation, where your employer provides you with accommodation that you live in. And in this case, that figure does include benefit in kind for the use of the flat above number 10 Downing Street. That is a grace and favour apartment that comes with being the Prime Minister, as is Chequers, all included in here, benefit in kind. Now then, bank interest, fairly modest for a multimillionaire, £293. Other interest, £690. Now, dividend income. So dividend income is pretty much matches his the salary that he earns as Prime Minister, 172 grand, split both from UK and US sources, where he was receiving dividends on various stocks and shares. Total income, taxable income, just shy of 330,000. Income tax thereon, 120,604, less overseas tax credit. So basically, like I said, if you're a UK resident, which he is, and you've got income and gains abroad, potentially you also pay tax over there. So to stop you from getting stung twice on the same income or gains, there is a mechanism of double tax relief which applies, which basically says that you will get tax relief in the UK to reduce your UK tax bill for any American tax that you've had to pay the Americans, up to a certain amount. And indeed, that's what's happened in Sunak's case. He's got overseas tax credit against his UK income tax bill of just shy of 14,000. So he's got a UK tax bill, 120 grand, and you knock off 14 grand for amounts he suffered in the States. Now, interesting enough, when you look at the small print, and it's actually the accountants who did his tax return, they published a summary, and in the small print that's online, it says, interestingly enough, that he hasn't basically claimed double tax relief for the full amount of overseas tax that's been suffered, which is quite interesting, because what happens in the double tax relief world, the amount that you can claim is restricted also to what it says in the double tax treaty. So we've got to look at the double tax treaty between the UK and the US, and there's obviously something in there which is meant that he's restricted on the amount of double tax relief that he can claim. So in other words, he's not getting full relief for everything he's paying over in the States tax-wise. Interesting, right? So that's the income side of it. The area where he's actually also significantly making a few quid is on capital gains. So capital gains, and this has all been again, it's all in the public domain. All of his capital gain exposure in America is in one US investment fund. So one fund being managed, and it's under what's called a blind management arrangement, which basically means that because he's Prime Minister, he can't actively manage this. Someone else has got to look after this for him. But there are still questions to be asked in terms of what shares are in there. You know, a lot of people are saying, well, you know, does that firm own shares in Moderna, for example, who obviously the British government did a deal with on all the vaccinations? Was there an interest there? Because certainly the private equity firm that Sunak was part of before he became Prime Minister many years ago, they do have an interest in Moderna. So things like that were not disclosed. I'm just hypothesizing, but, you know, whilst good that we've got this disclosure, doesn't tell the full picture. Anyway, blind management arrangement. How much of it, we don't know. What is in it, and also the extent to which it's been blind managed, because a total blind management arrangement could basically say Sunak says to an investment manager, just go away and make me some money for a few years while I'm the top guy, and go and just make me a few quid. Or it could say, yes, go and run this fund, but I want you to do X, Y, and Z, and give them some sort of steer. So we don't know the true extent of the blind management arrangement. Anyway, but the crucial thing is that this fund in America that he's got is structured a bit as private equity. And in the private equity world, there is a term called carried interest. Now, carried interest, you hardly would ever see on anybody's tax returns. It crops up on his because, you know, he's such a wealthy guy and he participates in these private equity arrangements. The vast majority of taxpayers, like 99.9%, will not come anywhere near this, and you will never see the term carried interest on a tax return. But when you do something like this, I'm going to tell you what it means. So basically what it means is that his investment vehicle in the States makes money. This private equity arrangement, this fund, it's made a few quid. And there is a basic understanding in the British Venture Capital Association that they went to HMRC many, many years ago, and they said, look, this return, this super profit on funds for our investors, how are we going to treat it for tax purposes? We're going to treat it like dividends or interest, or we're going to treat it like capital gains. And it was agreed with HMRC many years ago that such returns on these private equity funds known as carried interest will be treated and taxed like capital gains. So capital gains tax. So the capital gain on Sunak's fund in the 21-22 tax year, 1.64 million. So that's the return that he made. Interestingly enough, none of it was distributed to him. It was just kept in the pot, you know, to be reinvested. So it just remained offshore, i.e. in America, but he made a decent whack. He made a 1.6 million gain that year, treated as capital gains tax. Now, capital gains tax rates are lower than income tax rates. So the rules on capital gains tax, there are about 4 different rates. There's a 10% rate, an 18% rate, a 20% rate, and a 28% rate. So if you are a basic rate taxpayer and you sell something at a gain, except residential property, it's 10%. If you sell residential property and you're a basic rate taxpayer, that's 18%. If you sell anything else other than residential property and you're not in the basic rate, that's 20%. And if you are not in the basic rate and it's residential property, it's 28%. And also, carried interest is taxed at 28%. But that's great, because this being taxed at 28% is a lot better than it just being added on to his income, where he got hit for 45%. So paying 28% there, not 45%. But hey, listen, that's the rules. He's not doing anything particularly clever here. He's just invested in a vehicle which HMRC acknowledged to be treated and taxed when you make a return as if it was capital gains, not income. Fine. So, but here's interesting that I looked at when I looked at these numbers. So we disclosed this capital gain, and it's pretty much, we said that most of that in that fund would be this carried interest, which is taxed at 28%. But he also disclosed the UK capital gains tax thereon, which was £326,000. So quickly did the maths and said, well, 326 grand capital gains tax bill on a 1.6 million capital gain, that's actually closer to 20%. In fact, it's slightly under. It's about 19.8% effective rates. not 28%. But we know that the rules say if it's carried interest, it's 28%. So why is he only paying 20%? So interestingly, what was not on that information? Was there some double tax relief on capital gains that we don't know about? It mentioned about the double tax relief on income and income tax, but I couldn't see anything on the disclosure about capital gains tax suffered in America. Or is it the case of he did some capital gains tax planning? So some CGT planning where you can effectively defer gains, perhaps. Did he invest in some sort of tax efficient products where you can defer EIS or something like EIS or SEIS? I don't know, but certainly that effective rate of capital gains tax on that gain seems low. So either there was some double tax relief that's come off there, or there was some capital gains tax planning that went on to reduce that effective rate from 28% to 20%. Anyway, interesting look for me personally as a tax advisor. I'm sure interesting for you all as well, to see what the income and gain situation is of our Prime Minister. If you like this video, do remember to subscribe, and as always, I'll see you soon.